he comes, number 58. Von Miller against Mike Rimmers one more time. Cam Newton didn't feel it, didn't step up. The football just taken out of his hand. Cam Newton decides not to dive in there. And
he backs away from it. He jumped away instead of jumping into the pile.
Yep, I guess he made a decision. It wasn't worth to go in there and get it. Should have dove in.
Making a decision. We've made a decision. And that decision is it worth it? Is it worth it? And in that moment, in that 37-second clip you just saw, Cam Newton said, nah, it ain't worth it. Because we could have scored and had the extra point, and we could have been ahead 17-16, and we could have won the Super Bowl. And it ain't worth it. You have to look at your life that way. What's worth it? What's not worth it? Floyd began a series 2 weeks ago, and I got to tell you, I came off the stage after we did the closing last week, and I told Floyd, I said, Floyd, I'd never seen that. He said, I know, I'd never seen it either. How Ruth was a picture of God's chesed love. And Floyd taught you about that. God's chesed love, his loyal love. His love that when you say, no, go back. He says, no, I can't. I won't. His love, the book of Ruth demonstrates that. You see, when you're reading in the Bible, especially like in Deuteronomy and Numbers, especially in Deuteronomy, those laws, these are the letter, these are the rules, these are the statutes. You get to a book like Ruth and you see those statutes lived out. And you end up identifying, you end up seeing what does it look like when these things are lived out. Floyd covered the names, he covered this family. This family that instead of Moab being a detour, Moab became a destination for this family. And we looked at those names, and Elimelech means my God is king, but he wasn't acting that way because he didn't think God could sufficiently provide for his family because a famine was in the land. So he leaves Bethlehem and he goes to Moab, and he settles in there. It becomes comfortable there to the degree that the kids, his son says, oh, we're not going back. We might as well marry here. Because evidently Dad has decided we're staying a little bit longer. We're not just going to, this isn't just a detour for a season. This is a destination. Elimelech dies. His two sons died after they were married. And Floyd told you that part of the story. In fact, Floyd told you the end of the story. He told you how this story works out. And he told you last week the idea or the picture of God, the image of God being the protector, being whose wings you take refuge in. And he showed you that clip. So we know the beginning of the story and we know the end of the story. But along the way, there are certain high points. There are certain things we can learn. And this morning, I want us to jump to an event or a name or a concept that is displayed in this story because you decided not to go to the beach or not to go to the mountains on this Memorial Day weekend. And I think we'll tie that in here towards the end. But I want to tell you that this story in and of itself is kind of in the mind of Israelis. I want to show you a coin that was minted just last year. This is a coin, and it's they have it in gold and silver coin, and it is Boaz and Ruth. And so this is a coin that it's an investment type coin. But this is minted, and it keeps this story before the Israeli people. It's hit the news last year in Israel, and they publicized it and all. So this story is one that's near and dear to Israelis. There's an event that happens in chapter 2. Boaz, who is distant kin to Naomi's husband who's passed away, Boaz, he looks and he sees Ruth, who is a Moabite who comes to glean from the fields. In those days, you would end up leaving some of the edges of the field so the poor could come in there and glean. And if you were a widow, it would be, life was very tough for you. You had no standing. You had no one to watch out for you. It was very important that if at all possible, you get married. But that was not necessarily an option for everybody. And especially if you were a foreigner. And so they had moved back to Bethlehem, and Ruth goes to glean in the field of Boaz. And Boaz looks at her, and Boaz inquires about her, and he had heard about her. What he had heard about was her character and how attractive her character was. And he tells his servants, he says, make sure that she understands it is okay to glean in our fields. Don't have her going to other people's fields. There's protection here. Boaz is extending his care to Ruth and to her mother-in-law, Naomi, in this act. And so he wants to watch out for her. And she's a woman of character. She's a hard worker. And so she comes back and she tells her mother-in-law about Boaz and about how kind he was to her and how he didn't treat her like dirt. And Naomi says, you know, he's one of our kin. He's a distant kin to us. And then she says, here's what you need to do. You need to get dolled up. And you need to go and you need to get in front of Boaz after he's eaten, after he's has drank, after he's had a good night, because he's going back to guard all of that grain that's been harvested. Now, we know what time of year this was. It's the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. It's in the springtime. It's probably a couple of weeks ago from now. It's probably a couple of weeks back from where we are right now. And she says, you need to go and you need to lay down at his feet. Now, it's interesting. A lot of people, a lot of commentators have sexual things happening here. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's happening. What I think is happening here is something that's unusual. It is the woman making herself or letting her intentions be known. Hey, I'm available. I would be okay if a marriage took place. And so we get to the chapter, that comes through in chapter 3. All of that comes through. But we want to deal with chapter 4 because Boaz is a man that trusts God. Boaz is a man that's going to place this whole circumstance, this whole situation in God's hand. And he says, it is true, I am a kinsman redeemer. And we're going to look at what that is. But I can do some things. But there's a person in front of me. There's a person in front of me that I need to go talk to. So we're going to pick it up, the story in chapter 4. And in chapter 4, now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz spoke was passing by, the person closer to them. So he said, and I want you, if you read the book of Ruth and read it through and read through in different translations, it's fine. But notice the so. He tells you these things. He said, so this is what happened. So they did this. So they acted on this. So he said, come over here, friend. Sit down here. Now, I want you to notice that word friend. I don't know exactly. I'm going to put it in the sermon right now. This person, remember Floyd talked about all the names, what Naomi meant? My pleasantness, God's pleasantness. This is a person that's going to be pleasant. This is a person that her parents wished that would be pleasant, and she would be attractive to the point that people would come to know Yahweh, God, because of her pleasantness. Different names mean different things. In that culture, a lot of times it's easy to tell what the names mean. We were talking this morning, and I'd forgotten. Gail means source of joy. She is a source of joy to me. My name's not Gail. So I'm not necessarily a source of joy to her, but she's a source of joy to me. Names mean different things. In our culture, we don't really know that, the name thing. I remember when I was looking up Marshall. We named him Marshall. Marshal means ruler in I believe it's Greek. Yeah, it's Greek because I hadn't had Hebrew then. Well, it might have been Hebrew. I forget. I'm just saying. But it has that meaning. Here, it says, come over here and sit, my friend. The Hebrew is Poloni Almoni. Hey, Poloni Almoni. Now, you might think that's a name, but what that means is so-and-so. Come over here, so-and-so. Or another way that we would say it today, hey, what's your face? Come over here. And that's important because in a book that has names all in it, it's interesting that the person that stands as the kinsman redeemer, the closest kinsman redeemer, we don't know his name. There's a reason for that. We're going to come back and we'll touch on that, else we'll get the slides out of order. And he came over and sat down. Poloni Aloni came over and sat down. So-and-so came over and sat down. Then he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit down here. They would do, in the gates, they would do their business. They would do their judging. And he says, sit down here. And the 10 men came, and so they sat down. And he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has returned from the land of Moab, has to sell a plot of land which belongs to our brother Elimelech. She's in desperate straits. She needs to sell this land. Now the problem is, it is May. It is the end of April. It's May. The barley and the wheat harvest are happening. You got to spend money for this land, but this land's not going to be able to produce for a whole nother year. That's a big investment. And the fact of the matter is, because she's our kin, we've got to take care of her. So she's got this plot of land and she has to sell it. She needs to sell it. So I thought I would inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here. I've got witnesses who are sitting here, and before the elders of my people. If you'll redeem it, redeem it. But if not, just tell me so, that I may know. For there is no one except you to redeem it. You are first in line. And I'm after you. I'm giving you the honors to go first. You have your shot of it. You have first right of refusal. And he said, Poloni Almoni, said, I will redeem it. It's worth it. I'm going to do that. Look, I know it's a hard thing to how I could be so gracious and kind and so giving, but I'm going to take this land off Naomi's hands, and even though it won't produce a nickel, and even though it's going to cause me to dig into my finances and make investments, and I don't know what kind, we could have another drought. I'm going to do it because the cost-benefit analysis of this, I'll do it. It's worth it. Then Boaz says, one more thing. Just one more thing. On the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of the deceased, in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance. If you're going to act as a kinsman redeemer, there's certain responsibilities you have. Now, as a kinsman redeemer, you had to be related in some way, had to be close in some way. And you had a responsibility to first buy property or to buy back property that the members of the family had sold. Secondly, you had a responsibility to produce children, not for yourself, but for your brother. It's talked about in Deuteronomy chapter 25. You have a responsibility to produce heirs for your brother. And he says, the Redeemer said, I cannot redeem it for myself. Otherwise, I would jeopardize my own inheritance. When you look at this in the original language, it says, the Redeemer not, the kinsman not. He wants you to make sure this guy is not playing ball. And he says, I can't do that. The land is one thing, but to take on Naomi, to take on Ruth, to produce an heir for Elimelech, for his kids, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Why would I do that? The risk is way too high. And he says, redeem it for yourself. You can have my right of redemption since I cannot redeem it. Go on and redeem it. You can have the land, you can have Ruth. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel. So here's what we kind of take from this as we put this whole thing together. This story was probably written during the time of Solomon. And they're looking back. And by looking back, they're looking at what had happened. Remember the times of Ruth. It's the time of the judges. Everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. They've come a long way, but they look back at this story. And he says this was done, so he's explaining this is the custom in former times in Israel concerning the redemption and the exchange of land to confirm any matter. A man removed his sandal. When he said this is what's going to happen, he would remove his sandal and gave it to another. And this way, in this way, the confirmation, it was confirmed in Israel. So the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, and he removed his sandal. It's a done deal. You know, when you're playing chess and you move the chess and you've got your finger on it, the chess piece, and then is that your final move? I don't know yet. You're holding your finger on there. As soon as you make, okay, that's the final move. When he gives that sandal, that's it. It's done. He goes on. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I have brought from the hand of Naomi, all that belongs to Elimelech, and all that belongs to Chilion and Mahlon. Furthermore, I have acquired Ruth the Moabitess. He's using very legal language here. He's speaking legalese to them to make sure this is an open and shut thing. The widow of Mahlon to be my wife in order to raise up. The reason I'm doing this in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance, so that the name of the deceased will not be eliminated from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today. What so-and-so saw as a penalty, what's his face saw as a poison pill. You know what a poison pill is. They've talked about that here politically over the last few years. The congressional members will write a bill, and the bill is really, really good, but they put one thing in it that dooms it. It's the poison pill. So, what's his face saw the land as doable, but he saw Ruth as the poison pill. What's his face saw as a penalty, Boaz saw as a prize. He knew her heart. He knew that if he married this woman, she would love him. He knew that because of the conversation that had taken place. He knew what was in Ruth's heart. Now, the reason you did this is so the name will not be forgotten. Look in Deuteronomy chapter 26. It shall then be that the firstborn to whom she gives birth shall assume the name of his father's deceased brother. This is what the kinsman does. He produces an heir and he keeps that name so that his name will not be wiped out from Israel. So Boaz is doing this to produce an heir for Elimelech so Elimelech's name will not be forgotten. It'll be remembered. That's the way they did that, not only in Israel, but in those Middle Eastern countries. That's the way they did that. The kinsman redeemer, he was close enough to buy the property, to produce an heir, to buy someone out of slavery. If a family member was into slavery, he could redeem them, buy them out of slavery. He would even avenge a murder if a murder had taken place in the family or against a family member. We go on in Ruth, and all the people who were in the court and the elders said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah." See, we're at the time of Solomon looking back about 300 years or 200 years. And at Ruth, they're here celebrating and they're looking back to Genesis. And they say, both of whom built the house of Israel. The community, because of her character, the community is praising Ruth. They're praising Boaz and they're saying, we hope for you to have the best life. We hope for you to have a rich life. Rachel, just like Rachel and Leah, they built the house of Israel. We hope that you will raise an heir that makes Elimelech's name proud, and that you achieve wealth in Ephrath and become famous in Bethlehem. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the descendants whom the Lord will give you by this young woman. May your name be great. May you go forth. What's interesting in this book, I find, is that so-and-so didn't think it was worth it. We know Elimelech. We know Naomi. We know Ruth. We know Boaz. We know their kid's name. Here, several hundred years after the events, we know that. You know who we don't know? We don't know so-and-so. We don't know, what's his name? It's not that we've forgotten what his name was. We were never told what his name was. In that moment, he did not think it was worth it. He looked and he did a cost-benefit analysis. He says, it's not worth it. The reason you were supposed to raise an heir is so your name would not be forgotten. He didn't take on that job. And what happens? His name is forgotten. This weekend we celebrate, we remember, we pause and we stop. Flags are put by gravestones of names of people who went into battle and who gave the ultimate sacrifice of their lives. And what do we say? Don't forget. Don't forget. In some way, large and small, they felt like it was worth it. Freedom was worth it. They didn't say, oh, no, that's not for me. We have a Facebook page at my hometown Facebook page. You know you're from Halifax County, and there are things that will pop up there. Over the past few weeks, one of the members have been putting pictures in newspaper articles of the 14 men who died in Vietnam from our hometown. And what's interesting about that is different people who are still alive say, I remember him. I remember, and they'll tell stories of them. So young. And they're taken from us far too early. But it was worth it. Freedom was worth it. There was a kinsman who saw us in captivity, who came to this earth to redeem us, who died on a cross to pay a price to redeem us. He was our kinsman redeemer. Jesus filled that role. He thought the world was worth it. He saw that the world had come under the control of a different kingdom. Remember that? We've been talking about that. There are these two kingdoms that are at constant battle. And he stepped up. And he said, I will redeem. And he stepped up to do that. I want to tell you about a story of a man in 1964. He had been seeing this woman. This woman had been divorced. She had 2 little boys. And from his family, there was it was him. He was the younger sibling of 2 in their home. He had an older sister that was 2 years older. And so she and him grew up. Their family lived in a rented house, literally by the railroad tracks, because his dad worked for the railroad. And so he was not able to go to college. This older sister was. She went to nursing school, so she did work after high school, a little bit of work after high school. And so he went right into working for the telephone company. And he meets this woman who's an operator, and this woman has 2 sons. And he starts pursuing her, and they are starting to get serious. In fact, he asked her, marry me. Please marry me. Just marry me. And she made this statement to him. She says, I am never going to have any more children. I'm not going to have any more children. So he thinks about it. He has his last name, and if they were to get married, he would be raising 2 boys without his last name. There's no sister. There's nobody from his father's family to carry on that name, the name would end up being forgotten. He makes a decision in 1964 to marry this woman. To take on the job of raising these two kids. You know, the funny thing is you never know what the decisions you make, how they will end up looking. We can think we know. In 1964, if you took him into a room and said, well, I guess that's it, he would say, that's it. That name will be finished. And his parents were okay with it. His parents didn't beat him up over it or anything. But he knew that was just attention. They had dreamed that he would have kids of his own that would carry on his name. So he raised these two boys under a different name. And in 1978, when the oldest of those two boys turned 18, on the day after his birthday, that boy walked into a lawyer's courthouse and changed his name to his stepfather's name. And I walked out of that courthouse with a different name. 15 months later, my brother would do the same. Have a new name. I know it made my dad proud. But I didn't do it to make him proud. I did it because I felt like God wanted me to do that. Gail wanted to have 4 kids. I wanted to have 2, which only proves we don't do math. We ended up having 5 children, 4 of which are boys, and the other one is tough as any boy. And all 4 of those boys carry that name of that man that married that woman in 1964. And the grandson, or the great-grandson of that man, is named after him. That man has his grandson named after him, Robert Cheney, and his great-grandson named after him. You never know how the story's going to end. What you think is a destination might just be a detour, and what you think is a detour might just be a destination. What's his face? So-and-so, we don't know his name. We know Boaz. In fact, we know the name of the kids that Ruth had. Let's go to the next verse. He says, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her, and and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in all of Israel. May people know his name in all of Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life. Remember how Naomi has become bitter? Call me Mara. He's going to be a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. There were times where you would say, oh, if I just could have had more children. No, but look at what this daughter-in-law has done. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and became his nurse. And you know from Floyd's talking, she nursed him. And the neighbor woman gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. So they named him Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Israel's greatest king, David. You know, you want to tell so-and-so, hey, so-and-so, was it worth it? Wouldn't you like to have your name in there? Was it worth it? You'd ask Cam, was it worth it? You know, that's the video. That video's been played more than any other video in the Super Bowl for that particular Super Bowl. Everybody questions you. There's times to count the cost, and there's other times just to believe. Just go. God's a big enough God. My stepfather and his parents could have never imagined that they would have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren with their name after that decision in 1964. Could have never imagined it. Ruth is about God doing things very special in people's lives. Special whose hearts are turned to Him. Special whose hearts follow Him. And the impact of your life might be in a place where you never imagined it. Boaz is out there working in the field and he says, I'm going to make a difference by feeding people. No, you're going to make a difference by redeeming this woman. That's where you're going to make it. You never imagined your life would have that impact, but it did. Worth the risk. God looked at you and He said, you're worth the risk. Jesus walked up Calvary's hill and was placed on Calvary's cross because He said, you are worth the risk. You are worth redeeming from the chains of slavery. You're worth coming in and being part of my family. And He rose again the third day. We don't forget what He did for us. And we shouldn't forget what those soldiers have done for us. It's been said that, the American soldier and Jesus Christ both gave their lives so that we could be free. And we remember that this weekend. So, there's just so much in the big book of Ruth, and it just leaks out. It leaks out. It comes out, and you go, wow, it shows you. It displays the love of God in a way that you wouldn't get in other places. It just shows you they live it out, and they trust God to do it. May we do the same. Father, thank you. The times where we don't think we're worth it, where times we consider that we don't matter, that we need only to look at our kinsman redeemer, the one who took on flesh to live a perfect life, to die on a cross made for criminals and sinners, to bear our sins so that we could have life. Father, thank you that we understand that the value of any object is the highest price willing to be paid, and you paid the ultimate price. And you see us as valuable. And you don't see us as a poison pill, and you don't see us as a penalty, but you view us as a prize. Father, I pray that we would learn of your incredible love for each and every one of us, so that we could grow and walk in your ways and reflect your character in all that we do. For it's in Christ's name I offer this prayer. Amen.